back to the Waymakers podcast. Joining me in studio today from Palmer, Alaska is Nicole Baker, founder and owner of Net Your Problem. Nicole is a former North Pacific groundfish fisheries observer who became actively involved in looking for a way to recycle fishing nets from Unalaska. Her interest in this topic was inspired by Parley for the Ocean's collaboration with Adidas to make a sneaker out of confiscated fishing nets. And since 2017, she has been looking for fishermen with nets to get rid of and for recyclers who will take nets. So, welcome to us, Nicole. I'm so happy to have you on board with us today. Can you start explaining to our audience what Nature Problem is focusing on for those that are kind of outsiders to the fishing industry and the environmental negative impact of the fishing industry today?
Yeah. So we call ourselves a maritime plastics recycling company. And basically, what we're doing is we're finding an alternative we try to find a place to send that is not going to the landfill. So we try to do, mechanical recycling when we can, which is just where something gets shredded up and melted and turned into plastic beads, and then you can use that to make a new plastic product. If something isn't suitable for mechanical recycling, then there are a lot of other ways like burning for electricity or turning it into a concrete additive or turning it back into the oil that it comes from. All of those are ways to keep this valuable resource from just rotting away in a landfill.
Excellent. Um, and I mean, you have a very impact-driven focus in your business. And I wondered if you can explain a little bit more about which key contributions that your organization aims to deliver to the world. And if you look far ahead, well into your retirement stage, with your vision and commitment for the future, which footprint do you aim and hope to have left behind through your company?
Okay, I would say the impact that we're trying to have is to contribute to the circular economy. So, this idea of the circular economy is that materials that are produced, they don't just get used once and then leave the circle, that they get used once and then they can go around again or go around again. And so you get more than one life out of a specific material. So we say that we contribute to the circular economy because I think technically the definition of that would be if you had a water bottle, for example, you recycle it and it makes another water bottle. So it's like a perfect circle where the old one goes back into making the new one, which for us, the nets or the lines that we collect doesn't go to make a new net, but you could make a picnic table or a kayak or a sunglasses or something. So we're trying to keep these materials in circulation, and that um, reduces the overall environmental impact of manufacturing. So if you aren't putting things in a landfill and you're reusing it, you're reducing the carbon emissions associated with the plastic manufacturing process. We send some materials to Denmark, very close to where you are in Oslo, and one of the studies that they did showed that if you would use that plastic in manufacturing over using the plastic that comes from oil, virgin plastic, that you reduce the emissions by 83%. So we're trying to basically not waste these valuable petroleum resources is the idea behind recycling and keeping things out of the landfill. And I think, if I look into my retirement, ultimately, what I would like is for our non-landfill disposal options to be available in all of the major maritime ports of the United States, and for fishermen to say, okay, I have a net to get rid of, or the cruise ship company to say, oh, these lines are not safe for us to use anymore. What are we going to do with it? Well, of course, we're going to recycle. You know, 20 years ago, we used to throw these things away, but we just don't do that kind of thing anymore. That's not a socially acceptable practice, I guess, is where I would hope when I retire that things where we're at.
Excellent. I think that's a mission for many to share the whole issue of reducing and removing the need for virgin plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, also putting a value of resources that can also alternatively end up as ocean waste. Um, and then I wonder, um, with your drive and commitment, what specifically was it that initiated your personal commitment on this, and that sparked the journey for you to become an entrepreneur, moving from academia? Uh, and
Yeah.
I'm also super curious to learn what has been kind of the biggest surprises and challenges and the achievements since taking that plunge and moving into building your own company.
Okay. So I would say the sort of origin story or how the idea came around was that I did, as you mentioned in the intro, I used to work as a fisheries observer. So in the United States on commercial fishing vessels, there is a scientist who goes out with the fishermen and basically ride along and go wherever they go fishing, and they collect information about what the fishermen are catching, where are they catching it, what is the species and the age, and all of this information that gets used to decide how much fish the fishermen are allowed to catch. So that job I did from 2010 until 2015, and that brought me to places like Dutch Harbor in Alaska, or in Kodiak, or in Akutan. And in these places, there is a massive amount of fishing activity that is happening, and they're very remote. They're like islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, like closer almost to Russia than it is to the United States. And so it's very hard, like getting things in and getting things out. And so there was just mountains of nets that are just everywhere all around. People were paying to keep things in storage because they just didn't know what they should do with that material when that net got worn out or had too many holes. And so that job as the fisheries observer is what brought me into contact with these piles of nets everywhere. And I remember one time at the end of my last contract, that would have been in September of 2015, I was sitting at the like your computer, and I was reading a story about that in the that came from fishing. This sort of went on this for 5 years in the fishing put together this, two and two, that the nets were made from plastic. So that story is what made me realize that they were made from plastic and they could be recycled. And then I just thought, well, we have so many that I see you could send them for recycling. And after that, I found that we started sending nets there, and kind of just grew from there. And I think, one port would say, oh, we heard about that you guys are doing this in Dutch Harbor, and we want to do this here in Bristol. Winston Homer. And so I guess my biggest challenge is that I thought how I designed everything in the first place that we started recycling, we could just, copy and paste to each
Yeah.
of the new ports, and nothing could be further from the truth. So basically, every time we start recycling in a new place, we have to like start all over with, the logistics and who pays for it and where does it go, and all of this. It's like I started 20 companies almost. So sometimes it feels like, because everything's with a different program.
Mm. Yeah. No, that's typical. You don't really, you think that this is kind of copy paste, and there's so many local
Yeah,
differences. And
sure.
and
Yep.
and you sort of tapped into it, ports reaching out, etc. But I'm also very eager to hear which supporters that paid it forward from your earlier days that have enabled you to get to where you are, whether it's industrial partners, customers. Who is it that helped opening those very essential first doors for you?
Well, that's a very easy question to answer, actually. That was a seafood company that we worked with at the beginning. I had called one of the major seafood companies, one of the major shipping companies, and had asked for a quote to send the nets from Dutch Harbor to Denmark. And I
Mm.
think it was something like $11,000 or something for one container. I am like a new business and I don't ship a lot of volume of containers. And so when I was working with this seafood company, they allowed me to ship under their name, basically. So it was almost like that company was shipping instead of me. And so I got like a much cheaper rate because they have, so many containers that they're shipping, and they got a better price. And so without that, I'm sending materials. It was pretty important in the beginning. And now sort of they're getting these repeat customers. They recycled with us once, and they sort of cleaned out all of the nets that they had in storage for so long. But now that we've been in business for 8 years, they're getting to the point where the net that they bought when we first started now is coming to its end of life, and we're now like getting customers again that are recycling with us, or they recycle with us every year, and they just sort of know now that this is what we do. So those are also like very valuable relationships for us, the people that keep coming back to do it every time that their net needs to be disposed of.
Mm. Oh, that, I mean, I think those are like the perfect examples of how these established large players with very small, simple mechanisms can actually make such a huge difference for a new
Yeah.
small player.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it's also interesting because I don't know if you're aware, but there are there's some of the more environmentally focused cruise lines that are actually
Hmm.
using the um, old ropes and fishnets to produce lanyards and equipment for their guests to support that
Yeah.
circular economy focus.
Hmm.
And then I wonder,
Company in
Nicole,
why you couldn't make a bigger bracelet for your neck. That's a great idea.
so I also wonder, so you have already had great support, but what do you need today? What are kind of the type of partners, funding, customer access to new segments that you seek for your current and next stage of scaling? What are the resources that you need to grow further?
Yeah, so I would say two answers to this one. In terms of like the new sectors, we started in commercial fishing because that's where I had the experience being an observer. And what we're trying to do, like starting this year actually, is to be more of what I described in the beginning, which is the maritime plastics company. So I mentioned the cruise ships. We haven't actually worked with one yet. With like the tug and barge companies, we have worked with one. And similarly with the aquaculture farmers, we have worked with one. So we see that there is a lot of opportunity in these other maritime sectors that we haven't really targeted because we have been really focused on fishing. So I think this year we're going to try to go to so much more of maritime businesses. So I would say working for other customers. And then in terms of the resources, I think um, when you're a business, like you have to pay attention to is charging, and you can't really be like 5 times as expensive as the competitor because then people are going to go with the other option. For us, the competitor is the landfill. So you could just as easily legally take something to the landfill as you could recycling. And in some cases, for us, in the places that we work, the landfill is $0 to bring something there to drop it off. And
Yeah.
so that makes it very difficult for us, like impossible basically, to charge anybody for recycling when you could take it to the landfill for free. So we do sell the materials that we collect to some that way, but all of the time to the so we are trying to be, I guess, very creative in who we consider the customer.
Hmm.
So the cities a lot of times benefit from landfill diversion because they may have a goal to say we want to reduce these materials by 15% in the next 10 years. Or the port has some carbon emissions goals that they want to reduce, and recycling can support that. So we're trying to see who are the ones who value our service that they could contribute to the cost of doing the recycling instead of putting all of that burden on the individual who is generating the waste.
Yeah.
So I think this is what we're kind of looking for in terms of the funding would be like who would be those interested companies to support the services that we are offering, even if you are not sort of a direct customer to get rid of.
Totally get that. That is super input. And then I wonder, because I mean, our journeys are filled with challenges, and we do absolutely need support from the global village around us, basically, to
Mm-hmm.
deliver on our goals and visions. And are there any specific key challenges that you are facing now where you have a plan to overcome it and where you think that Tool and our global audience could support you?
Well, I think generally speaking, what I say to, like person who is not specifically involved in fishing or cruise ships or the waste management industry is that if you like recycling and you want to see it be around and you want to participate in that, something that you need to purchase a product that is made from the recycling for that product, then there is no sense for me to be collecting the plastic or for the recycling company to make a recycling marketplace for manufacturing.
Absolutely.
I generally like to be an informed consumer, so all of the time you don't even and read really small companies that are making things from letters on the product or on the packaging. So you cycling and you want to then you want to try to purchase items that are made from that recycled plastic.
Hmm. And and to those in the tool community that are either within the cruise or the fishing industry, then they should absolutely check out your work and
Yeah.
see if they
Hmm.
can come on board.
Yeah.
And and then I wonder, working with Tool and building up the uh, global map and community of female founders and owners, we are working under a very strong belief that true strength and resilience is built through openness, sharing our vulnerabilities, and being just ourselves and human. And I wonder if you have a story or insight to share representing one of your biggest challenges, how you have worked to overcome it, and how you have gathered some life hacks or specific advice that you would like to share with other founders and women out there to inspire them on their journeys.
And I'm a business owner. And because I feel like as a scientist, you go to conferences and you speak for free. You want data to be publicly available. Um, and then when you change to be a business owner, then you say, well, all of my data is now like a trade secret. And if you want me to speak at an event, you should like pay for my travel and you should pay me for my expertise. So the whole idea of being a business owner for me was hard in the beginning, but I also feel like I had something I wanted to do, and the business was the way to do it. So I struggled in the beginning, like identifying as a business owner or entrepreneur. And especially, I didn't like, to be honest, this whole idea of having to be distinguished as a female founder. Like, why you have to say that? Like, I started a business, so I am a founder, right? But someone who participates in fishing is fisherman, and that has a gender associated with that word. And I know women that fish that they want to be referred to as fishermen. They don't want to be fisher person or fishers. They don't want like a special distinction based on their gender in the occupation that they have. So this all was, I guess, like a little unsettling, or I don't know really how to describe that in the beginning, but I think ultimately it is a identity that is now something that I accept, that Nicole Baker and Net Your Problem are also the same, you know, like as a founder, you are your business. And
Yep.
so I guess that sort of just comes from doing it for so long that now you feel like, okay, I guess I am really a business owner. I know how to use QuickBooks and all this, whatever, you know, accounting softwares and all these things that you learn as you go through. But I think, you know, I had no idea when I first started what would all of what was involved in doing the work, but also in running a business. And probably if I did know, I would have been too uncomfortable or scared to actually. So I think if you, yeah, if you're passionate about something and you have a vision that just not everybody's business succeeds, but I think always you should just try if you feel like you have something to add to the world. And I think the confidence comes, as you go and establish yourself and make connections, and people tell you what you're doing is of value, and you get invited to be on podcasts and be on lists of
Yeah,
female founders. Like, that really helps. So
yeah, I hope so.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so based on your experiences and now having, some years in the game,
Yeah.
um, we also focus a lot on the paying it forwards approach
Okay.
within the tool community. And I wonder if you can share with me. I mean, we all need resources, but every one of us also represent a resource to others. So, do you have some perspectives on which kind of resources that your company represent towards other innovators within the value chain of ocean plastics and circular economy?
Yeah, I would say this is an interesting question, and the timing of it, because I think this just happened today. So I had a lady from Argentina that she called, and she said that she makes the mask for a horse so that it keeps the flies out of their
Yeah, yeah.
eyes. And they make them out of nylon, which is the same kind of plastic that the nets that we collect are made out of. And
Mm.
she said, would this be something that you could help us to recycle? And so we talked over, like, what materials it's made out of, what are the possible schemes for her to be sending the materials to us, like when their customers buy a new mask, that then they get a label that they can send the old one back in for recycling. And I think because I have some experience on this industry, I have seen sort of how other recycling or upcycling companies have done this. So I offered that idea to her. And then also she said, well, product use the horses. So it was like a bag that you put the hay in that they're eating, and it slows it down because there's all this, you know, squares they have to pull the hay from.
Yeah, so it takes
And
longer for
so
them to eat it. Yeah.
takes so they can't just like really eat so quickly. And so she was saying, oh, do you know of some companies that could help us to manufacture this product out of the old netting? I said, yes, I do. It's the same people who are making the nets. And so we just talked through this idea of us collecting the used netting like we already do, and selling that netting to them, and then they could also just have these companies that are making the nets to be making that feed bag. And so, when you sort of already have an idea of the landscape, or who the players are, or how things are done, we just spent an hour talking, and who knows how long that would have taken them to Google and search and find these similar answers. So when you when you speak with somebody who has been on that industry or does that job for a while, that's knowledge that they just absorb from doing what they do, and then you can help somebody kind of take like a big jump, into like the next stage of their planning by sharing that information.
Absolutely. That is great examples. And I think there
Yeah.
are, for so many small companies, that whole insight and an overview of like the value chain, the logistics, supply chain parts, it's so complex. And there are
Yeah.
also so many opportunities for kind of clustering innovators together in a lot of these
Yeah.
fields.
Yeah, like
And
not reinventing the wheel, basically, right? Like, we
exactly.
already figured out how to do this, so we can share it with you now.
Yeah, right. And then I wonder, if you have any kind of champions or somebody that has inspired you, are there any female founders or owners that you really feel has been an inspiration and that you would like to have featured on the Wavemaker podcast onwards?
Yeah, I think this is also a very timely question because we just finished doing a beach cleanup in Cordova, Alaska, so in Prince William Sound. And that beach cleanup was organized by a company called Drifters Fish, and it's owned by a couple, Nellie Hand and her husband Michael. And I think the way that this whole thing was organized was absolutely exceptional. It involved like four wheelers or ATVs, uh, boats, bigger boats, tides, weather, a lot of unknowns, a lot of problem solving. And this cleanup was with the participation of fishermen who are so good on all of these things that I just described. And so they're now trying to find, I think, different ways for their vessels to make money. So they fish for salmon, also for the last 3 years have fished for spot prawns, which are like a large shrimp. So they're just trying to be like in terms of happened. I mean, over with all and on the end of the 48 hours with only 10 people. So I would say that was a very inspirational thing to be a part of. And Nellie is the one who organized all of that. And I would say definitely she could be a really nice guest for the podcast in the future.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. So we will
Yeah.
make sure to reach out.
Okay.
Then my last question to you is really about the future, because of course, beyond supporting existing female founders and help raising awareness, visibility, and connecting with scaling resources and supporters, we also care a lot about bringing in and opening up our industries for more talents. After all, we are competing with a lot of other industries that are much more visible to youth. And in this part of the talent battle, really, um, do you uh, have you identified some key human skills and capabilities that you really consider um, essential for young people entering our sectors these days? And also, have you gathered up a great advice for any young talent listening in today who has a heart for the ocean and who wants to get in to the blue economy?
Yeah, I would say one of the skills, I guess, is um well, I should say, so I went through like the formal education process. I have an undergraduate degree in marine biology and a master's degree in fisheries biology, and really using any of that education in my current job. I think there are some relationships that I got from that are part of my current job, but I think um there's something to be said for like the ability to just like learn on the go or problem solve or critical thinking, these kind of just m- more skills, I guess, than like basic knowledge. So I would say anything that you could do that would help with those kind of skills rather than just like learning topics or memorizing in a textbook, because you really have no idea where your life path is going to lead you. I feel like a lot of times in a traditional, like an interview, for example, you're gonna interview for a company and they say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Honestly, I could not answer that question at the moment. I have no idea like where this whole thing is gonna lead. So I try to make decisions that make me happy and that I feel like are gonna further the mission, but really you have to be flexible because maybe you thought this was going to work and you tried it and it didn't. So now you're going that way. So I guess I would just say, like, my advice to young people is don't feel like just because you invested on one path that you have to keep going on that path. Like, I'm paying student loans that am not really utilizing that education in my job now, but so yeah, I feel like don't be afraid to change, I guess. If you go on one way and then you think something else is going to make you happy or something else is going to improve the world, like it can be okay to take a risk sometimes because maybe it works out.
Great. I think those are excellent advice and inputs. And yeah, I really, really agree. I think the world is changing so fast that the only constant will be change. So kind of the resilience of coping with and adapting to huge changes that we go through, managing to navigate them rather than just stop and feel worried is absolutely essential. So, Nicole, I'm just so grateful that you were able to join us today. I really
Hmm.
enjoyed our conversation. And to those of you that are tuned in, well, wait and be excited because we have plenty of new super episodes to go with amazing founders from around the world. So, thank you.